I guess I have a confession to make. For years, for decades, I'm struggling to understand our educational system. So this is not a recent development. In fact, I was struggling for quite a while. And it has everything to do with a number of questions that I don't get. So why has society changed over the last 1,000 years, but education hasn't really? And why do we assume a one-size-fits-all approach in education and do not really provide personalized education? Or why do we cover content but not let students discover content? Why is learning work and not fun? Why does it happen between 9 and 5? Why do we learn by subject and not across subjects? Why is it the case that you have German and French and English and do not combine that with mathematics, or at least cross these different languages? Why do we show students content and not make them part of content? Why not consider immersive education? Why is quality education not accessible globally? Why in the Western world we seem to have higher quality of education than other parts of the world, even though society would allow us to share considerably more? Why do we have assessments after learning and not during learning itself? It's kind of weird that if a student cannot get along, you punish him or her towards the end, rather than intervene right in the middle of the learning process. And why do we have AI solutions but not really use them for education? These are some of the questions that have puzzled me. And in fact, if you look at the literature, there's a lot of surprises about the current state of education. In fact, there are a lot of misconceptions. So let me give some examples of that. I mean, as educators, we tend to say, students, you should reread the textbook because that's good for you. Well, that's not what the research shows. In fact, it can be detrimental to reread the textbook. We also tend to say, well, let's highlight the important pieces. That's not what the research says. Highlighting can be detrimental, including Air Force trainees, children, and undergraduate students have failed to help students of all sorts. When we tell students to make notes on a laptop computer, in fact, the research says that that's not really helpful. It turns out to be the case that students who took notes on laptops performed worse on conceptual questions than students who took notes longhand. And it also works for institutions. So for instance, student evaluation of teaching, SAT ratings, do not correlate with effective learning. A meta-analysis of many studies revealed no significant correlations between those student evaluation of teaching ratings and learning. And these findings suggest that institutions focused on student learning and career success may want to abandon those SAT ratings as a measure of faculty's teaching effectiveness. And I can go on and on and on. I can focus on MOOCs. We know from MOOCs that the retention is pretty poor, but more things are going on. Studies show that results indicate that although most MOOCs are well packaged, their instructional design quality is pretty low. And if you take this even further, if you look at John Hattie's work, who analyzed some 100 meta-analyses on effective learning, what he finds is that effect sizes for those studies looking at retention and boredom show negative effect sizes. Boredom has a negative effect on learning gain. Retention has a negative effect on learning gain. You don't want to hold student back. No effect sizes are found for web-based learning and one-on-one laptops. And positive effect sizes are found for classroom discussion and feedback. And these studies, particularly the positive effect sizes, I've tried to implement in my work, or I should say in our work. For instance, in the DAF Technology Lab on the Tilburg University campus, a mixed reality lab where students can collaborate in an education environment where the virtual world is presented on the wall. So that's not an individual experience, but you can actually see each other. You can walk around. This is an old picture of the DAF Technology Lab. The new DAF Technology Lab we're currently building in the back end of the cube. There are two large caves, 360 degrees views, so students can walk around, 4 laser projectors. And to give an impression of the size of magnitude, the old lab had 1 speaker system. The new lab, the new cave system, and we have 2 of them, each have 42 speakers and 2 woofers to also have directed sound to, for instance, allow for intelligent tutoring systems. Plus there's full-blown tracking, so the image can move around while the students are walking around in the space. This gives you an idea of the quality of the picture in a new DAF Technology Lab. Now, in the DAF Technology Lab, funded by the Packard Foundation, €500,000 in a philanthropic donation, we also conducted research as part of the Campione project, a large project on condition-based maintenance, where we looked at the success of training. For instance, would it be possible to look at neurophysiology of learners and see whether they are learning on the basis of their neurophysiology? And if that's possible, you can adjust the content and can give those students that cannot make the progress that you would hope for different contents than students that are running through a course, not on the basis of exams, but on the basis of how they behave in an environment. For instance, we build an escape room where we have a neuroscience class where students are tracking parts of the brain, labels of the brain, functions of the brain in sort of a gaming environment. And what a number of scientific studies have now shown is that the learning gains are considerably higher in those case settings than in alternative traditional forms of training like textbook conditions. And moreover, students consider it to be far more fun. I already mentioned intelligent tutoring systems. We're basically developing those intelligent tutoring systems in the VI project. When I was working in the United States, we built AutoTutor, a computer that can have a conversation with its students 24/7 on a variety of topics, computer literacy, conceptual physics, et cetera, But with the current state of AI, you can do so much more. You can have machine learning algorithms, so these systems can actually adjust. You can use photogrammetry scans to make those agents look considerably more natural. So together with the Maxima Hospital in Eindhoven, the Spaarne Gasthuis, as well as a number of technology partners and knowledge institutions, we're building those conversational agents. But let me mention another project that sort of brings together the DAF Technology Lab, the Campione project, and the VI project, and that's SpaceBus. Because in SpaceBus, we're combining all these technologies to create ambassadors of planet Earth.
Since the dawn of spaceflight, many astronauts have reported their most profound moment did not come on arriving in outer space, but instead, when gazing back.
Oh my God, look at that picture over there.
They saw our small, fragile planet and realized it's all we have. This powerful cognitive shift is known as the overview effect, and less than 600 people have been to space to experience it. Spearheaded by ESA astronaut André Kuipers, the Overview Effect Foundation takes children on a revolutionary educational program designed to inspire a new generation of young ambassadors for planet Earth, sending them into space on a custom-engineered rocket using virtual reality. In a classroom, a young crew is guided through a series of pre-flight lessons. After completing their training, the rocket arrives. Then, cadets embark on a virtual reality journey, where Kuipers points out the world's natural wonders and humanity's impact on the environment. Finally, armed with the magic of the overview effect, cadets hold a press conference, just like real astronauts, with the program traveling to classrooms around the world, inspiring a change in behavior to share our world and its resources more sustainably, as we're all astronauts aboard Spaceship Earth.
So what SpaceBus tries to do is combining intelligent tutoring systems, serious gaming, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence, learning analytics. And it has already done that with some 9,000 children. Some 400 schools have been signed up for the next few years. In fact, if there is an elementary school that would like to use the SpaceBus, they will have to wait for 2 years. The good news is that some new rocket ships are in the making. But of course, as scientists, we want to measure what's going on. Together with Anna van Louwerse and Marie Pasma, we did a large experiment with some 200 children to test whether children actually learn from the SpaceBus experience. And that turns out to be the case. They experience the overview effect, viewing the Earth as a fragile planet. And once they experience the overview effect, there are actually learning gains taking place. Together with a master student of mine, we took massive amounts of head movement data. as a proxy for attention, eye movements, to see whether we would be able to cluster various students. And if we're able to cluster those students, whether their head gaze would allow us to predict learning. And that seems to be the case. So again, on the basis of neurophysiology, we might be able to predict learning. And on the basis of that, we can adjust the simulation to provide personalized education. In the meantime, we're doing scans with actual astronauts. So you see an example of André Kuipers, where you use photogrammetry techniques and recreate a virtual human. That's one step. The other step, of course, is to create facial expressions that are natural in conversation and create dialogue management that makes natural dialogue. Meanwhile, Spacebus has won several international awards, the Webby Awards, the Lovey Award, and has rolled out its initiative to Hungary, to Italy, to France, and the United States, despite the fact that there is a corona crisis.
Well, I have a wonderful electronic invention I want you to see. It looks something like this.
You can now put on your space helmet.
Welcome to space.
You can experience things that you think you'd never see. The ocean is just so blue. It's nice.
We're going at like a super high speed up to space to see the big blue and green beautiful Earth.
So this Spacebus experience actually made me feel quite as though I was back in space.
That was even more amazing than real space flight.
When I was in space, being able to look down at the Earth and realizing that I'm looking down at 7 billion people, and our job is to take care of each other and take care of our environment at the same time.
And the fact that the Space Bus pulls up to their school and takes them to space is going to be something that changes their lives.
That was amazing.
I think it should be something that every human being, young and old, get to see. Of course, children will really enjoy it and will take this experience to heart, but I think we should take it to UN and make all the world leaders do the same thing.
So when we're thinking about the future of education, the future of learning in an age of artificial intelligence, it sort of reminded me of a meeting I had earlier this week. So somebody mentioned that Tilburg shouldn't be playing with the big boys of artificial intelligence because we are so different when it comes to artificial intelligence. And I strongly disagreed. First of all, we have one of the largest educational programs in artificial intelligence. We have one of the best researchers in artificial intelligence. But moreover, perhaps it's not a question whether we want to play with the big boys of artificial intelligence and the big girls of artificial intelligence. Perhaps we are the big boys and girls. Perhaps what we should learn is how to play. And that brings me to where I started, to infinity and beyond. Thank you very much.